welcome to the Ketriana Yvonne virtual show. Today's feature is Makeba Kadeem DeBose from Chicago, an artist that is extraordinary, and we will find out more about her today and her work. I've discovered her on Facebook. I've been following her, and I love all her work. And due to COVID, I am able to have this interview via Zoom, being that she is in Chicago and I am in New York, and she could not make it to our studio. So welcome, Makeba.
Hi, Ketriana. Thank you.
Nice to have you here, or for us to meet. So tell us about who you are, the little that I know you were one of those people that knew they wanted to be an artist from a very young age. So tell us how that was for you and just how that inspiration came to your spirit at that time, and just about your art and your inspiration. And give us your bio as well.
So, well, you asked how did I start? I was very fortunate to be mentored by a Jesuit priest when I was in elementary school, who was an amazing artist. And he was very open-minded Jesuit priest, and he encouraged, freedom of thought and experimentation. And that was a really fantastic environment to be in as a young person, as a youth. And, I experienced things that many artists who go to, to art schools, to receive. I received this education while still in elementary school.
Wow.
And I was doing things like lithography and advanced drawing techniques and color theory, ceramic pottery throwing, all of that, everything really.
Wow.
Very giving in that way.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. So was this school an art school, or this was just that you were mentored and witnessed to all of these experiences?
It was a Catholic elementary school, and my family, we attended the church there, and I went to the school. All of my cousins went to the school, so we were really very much a part of that community.
Okay, great.
Very multi-ethnic community too.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one of the things that, I recall very strongly from my youth, is being in that church, which was over 100 years old. The church had survived the Chicago fire.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember as a child just looking at those windows and wondering, where are the Black people? And that was, even as a little child, I
Right.
recognized that. And then as time went on, I started noticing, where are all of the other type of people as well, and noticed that there were only white people and Latinos. So that I think that had a great impact on my latter art. And that my art actually mimics those stained glass windows, but with the addition of people of color.
Wow, that's interesting, because that perception a lot of younger people have spoken about. And I just want to ask about that for a minute. So do you think, growing up, did you see a lot of diversity?
Actually, I did, because my neighborhood, the way it was set up was there were Italians in one area, Hispanics in one area, and African Americans in another area, and we were all in close proximity to one another and attended a lot of the same schools.
Okay.
Catholic schools anyway, not the public elementary schools, but
okay. So that's interesting, because I guess when I was growing up, I could remember when you talked about the church, and I hadn't thought about it for a very long time. I lived in Philadelphia for a couple of years, like kindergarten to maybe second grade. And I'm remembering now what they call, it was like the advocacy. And it was like this big castle-like church. And we used to go there, and do arts and crafts. And it's funny because it was like this needlework. So I think I was like 5, and my aunt was having a baby, and these other, it was like little baby jars, and I think we put I don't know, it was like noodles or something, and you stuck them on a jar. So those were like 2 projects that I still have. Well, my aunt has the what was supposed to be the needlework, and it was like, a present for her having a baby. And I think she pulled those out, and so that made, I hadn't thought about that, as far as the art in the church. But yeah, but it was a different experience for me because I didn't really see, I guess it was more segregated, so I didn't really see, other than in that church or if you went to the
There was
hospital.
segregation, but because the communities were so close to one another, you know, there were like, the Italian lemonade stand, and everyone went to the Italian lemonade stand. So we all kind of, met up at some place along the way on a daily basis. And my school was integrated, so
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're a native of Chicago?
I am.
Okay. So how has that experience been, like the whole Chicago art scene, as far as Black artists? Is it more like in New York, from what, in my community in Brooklyn, then you have like Harlem, and it's such a, I guess, tight knit um,
Uh,
proximity of artists where everyone kind of, about this one. We had a book, Brooklyn on My Mind, that came out a couple of years ago now. And so in my, what part of my project for me was to get, well, some of the people had passed on, but for everyone that was still living, that I would get them to sign my book. So that kind of gives you an idea of how close all of these people are. They're not like miles and miles away. So that's interesting.
That's pretty much the same in Chicago. We have a very
Hmm.
close knit Black American arts community that's
Hmm.
mostly centered on the south side of Chicago, which is where my studio is now. But I didn't originate on the south side of Chicago, so I'm kind of a transplant,
Uh-huh.
But I worked in the neighborhood for years, in the different galleries that were housed on the south side of Chicago. But I originally did more on the north side of Chicago. And, it was an entirely different experience. Um, I was pulled into the South Side Black art community by an old friend of mine, Del Washington, who passed away actually last year, early last year, before COVID started. And
Hmm.
Del was just such a gregarious person. He knew everyone. He was just like, look, we got to pull you back into the fold, girl. That's, yeah. And he brought me in, because I had been exhibiting, like I said, on the north side with a lot of white artists or,
Right.
Hispanic artists. Yeah.
Then I
And
guess,
I'm glad you
so,
did.
so how do you, so when you say he pulled you back into the fold, so how do you see yourself? I mean, I would think that you don't really, well, I don't know. How do you see yourself as like merging? Do you, like some people identify in their work and they say, oh, I'm a Black artist, I'm a Black writer. Or do you just identify as an artist?
Um, no, I acknowledge my Blackness. You can look at my art and see that. I mean, it's like it comes from a very Afrocentric perspective, maybe even bordering on Afrofuturism
Mm-hmm.
in a very mild way. Uh, but I do also, I don't like being pigeonholed,
Right.
Recently, I submitted a curatorial exhibition for a gallery on the north side, and it was for a show that I had produced in 2015. It was called Migrations in Black and White, all Black and white show, all Black artists on the north side of Chicago, where they're not normally, we're not normally as visible. And it won an award and was a very strong show. But given the state of things right now, I wanted to kind of reorganize some themes because the show was never really about race. It was about, the Great Migration. It was loosely based on that, but it was also about, mainly it was about black and white, and the juxtaposition of those two colors and all of the things that come out of just mentioning those two colors. So the artists were allowed to, create in whatever subject matter they wanted to use. The only thing is it had to be pure black and white, no gray tones, no shading, none of that, pure black and white. And the only exception was in the framing. They could choose a black or white frame, black frame, white frame, or red frame. Wow. And it was just so visually impactful. So I wanted to recreate that because it was always intended to be a traveling show. And I have not done anything with it since because I was going through a very tumultuous time during that time. Mm-hmm. Had to slow down. This gallery, they denied my submission, but then they came back to me and offered me a different offer than what I was submitting for, to be in a BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, color, exclusive exhibition that was set up like art fair in the gallery. So I would be curating a booth as opposed to curating a gallery. And I don't know, that rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't feel right about that, so I didn't accept the offer. I kindly thanked them, but declined. I don't like being pigeonholed like that. Mm-hmm. I decide to do a BIPOC color, exhibition on my own. That's one thing, but that's not what I applied for. So don't push me into that box.
Right. That's interesting because now when you look at most of the grants and different things that are even fellowships for everything is BIPOC or, transgender. And, I know before things, how they kind of change with the politics of society. Mm-hmm. And so I would kind of think that now it's pretty much every, application I've looked at is, it's everything, but no, it's not everything. It's under those, and then some is just, you have to be in those categories. Yeah. So it's kind of limiting. And then that's sometimes where I've run into a problem because when, I don't know, it's just a bigger issue of when people want to be equal and then they create all of these, still a lot of separate things for individuals and groups. And then you have all this separatism and that denies, like, whereas now I'm starting to feel like people are being denied. And it's a very subtle way. And if you're not real conscious of it, like, I don't want to say like I am, but I am. People just kind of move with the flow and they don't really see what's happening. And you have to be careful about that. So
I'm not, I have a problem with separatism.
Yeah. So it definitely is a lot going on in the arts and with the grants. And I guess it's always been like whatever the particular deemed strategy of, before you, as I guess with politics, it changes from time to time. But I think pretty much everything I've seen now is just for, and then it limits like who can participate. So then it might be, like you said, something that you apply for, but then they probably would want to exclude you and put you in another category. But then the same people that have a category can apply and, go all over the place. So it's not equal.
It it was a curatorial open call.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
yeah, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. That's I get you.
Yeah, but but I will say that their explanation for why they denied the show was, you know, perhaps valid to some extent, because they it was a very long proposal, because I like to have 22 artists in my shows. That's my number.
Mm-hmm.
Born October 22nd.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
22 is a power number, you know, and all of that. So I do like to have 22 artists in my shows. And the first iteration of that show had 22 artists, but I had my own gallery at the time. So I was able to do whatever I wanted to do. And that's the thing. I've been maybe a 4 or 5 time gallerist, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think I'll be doing that again, because it tends to take me away from my own practice. And that's
Okay.
ultimately more important to me. But
Mm.
so yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was like 72 pages long, you know. So I get it.
Uh-huh.
The reason why, though, is because of their requirements. They want
Mm-hmm.
so many images from the artist, so many, you know, all of the, they wanted CV and bio, and I mean, just like more than
Normal.
is really necessary, in my opinion. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I need to know who the artist is, you know, a bio and some samples of their work. And I do the rest on my own, you know, when I had a gallery. So yeah, you know, I just don't like being put in a box, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't work.
Right. So when you come up with your pieces, how do you identify with them? Like, do you have names for the faces? Um, you know, like your little babies, you know, like I have a friend here that's an artist and she curates some shows, but I'm always like, you need to sell your stuff. She's like, no, I don't, she doesn't want to sell it. And,
I
you know,
used to be that way. I think
huh?
a lot of artists start out that way, but if you're serious about being an artist, and if you are a self-employed artist, you don't have
Right,
the luxury of,
right. When you're an artist, but you're not employed, but looking for a job, when to me, it's like your art is you and your job, but you haven't, I know this person, so I know what I'm dealing with. But yeah, she's like, oh, some of them I like. I don't want to sell them. I'm like, okay.
well, I have my favorites too, and there are
Mhm,
that I don't sell. In fact, I'd rather give them to my children than to sell them. You know,
mhm.
I'd rather keep them in my family. You know, I
Right,
give them to a good friend, because for me, money was never the main
right,
goal of being an artist. I'm just an artist. You know, I
right,
have,
right, right,
if I don't create, I get a little cuckoo, you know, so I
right.
create. And yeah, I remember even as a, you know, a child, knowing that I was an artist, I would say, you know, I didn't really care about the money. I wanted to be famous. And the reason for that is, of course, I've changed on that, you know, in recent years, because, you know, you have to support yourself. But the fame was more important because of building legacy for my family,
Mhm,
something to leave behind for my family. So, I mean, I grew up, you know, a little Black girl on the west side of Chicago, with my grandmother, you know, in a housing project, you know, but I went to
mhm.
schools. My grandmother was, you know, serious about the good shoes. And, you know, we always looked really great, you know, clean and very respectable family. You know, my aunts and my mom, my mother was a nurse, my aunts were, you know, professional women. So I mean, I came from like almost two sides of the track at the same time, going to like private schools, living in the housing project, you know, being raised by my grandmother, you know, so there was a whole lot of stuff going on. But I did not have legacy, you know,
Right,
the kind that counts in the art world. I didn't have
right.
pedigree. That's the word. People
That
talk
that's
about that a
that's
lot.
it.
Yeah, I hear
Yeah,
that so much. You know, it's like pedigree. I'm like, can they paint? Can they sculpt? Can they write? Can they do what it is they need to be doing? You know, but that's just not the way our world works, especially in the arts. The arts is a
right.
very elitist field. You know. Yeah.
That's like I was telling a story yesterday about Kanye West.
Mhm.
and that his artistry outside of making music, like how his father was an artist, and I saw he was on his work, Kanye's work was on Antique Roadshow. And so, like you say, legacy and who ends up with it. So when he was 17, his first project, I guess, that he did for school is he doesn't have it, but somebody else has it. I think it was, can't remember. I think it was like 220,000, and it was like 3 pieces. And just a random collector has Kanye West's first work.
That happens. I mean, I
Yeah,
did a lot of work, in my in the early years of my career, and I wasn't selling them for a lot of money. It's like I had to eat, and
right.
I've always been more the working artist, because I was not very good at keeping jobs.
Hmm.
Worked in management and stuff, but I hated it. I just did not like that atmosphere. It did not work for me. So
Hmm.
I always said I'd rather be poor than to under the tyranny of corporate America,
Hmm.
then so be it. I just have always worked hard, for everything that, I have in my life. And it
Hmm.
never mattered to me if it uh, amounted to a Mercedes or, or a Louis Vuitton bag or whatever. I don't
Right,
really care about, I'm not materialistic at all.
right. So your art pretty much serves your comes from your spirit, and it serves your
Yeah.
soul as far as like who you are, nurturing yourself and keep, like you said, keeping you sane. So
Yeah.
how much time do you dedicate to your practice, like on a daily basis? And have you always been like consistent with that?
To be honest, I'm not a very consistent person in general because I have ADD, diagnosed ADD, and I also have a depressive disorder, which I am very honest and open about, and I think
Hmm.
people should be. I teach, elementary and high school children, or I used to. I do it like every now and then. I was doing it before COVID, but not right now. As a contracted.
Hmm.
Teaching artist, I would teach programs about how to use art um, as a weapon against depression. I
Right.
didn't study art therapy or anything like that. It's just I've always worked with children. I was a youth art program director at a nonprofit organization for many years of my life. And a lot of those kids came from some really horrible situations. And I just noticed how they just came to life and were so happy when they were creating art. And they would,
Hmm.
and you could just see like a cloud come over these poor babies. And it was just, yeah. And so I've always felt it was important to share whatever gift I think I have as an artist with children who might otherwise not have the opportunity to um, um, engage in art. It's like I'm the type of artist who will pack up all my art supplies and take them to the park, lay out a blanket, put everything out, and invite anyone who wants to create and not think about, oh my God, I just gave away all my supplies, So, but it all comes back to you,
Right, right.
yeah.
So even in that, I guess that would be considered like collaborating in a sense,
Oh, I'm,
sharing.
yeah.
And even I guess what the supplies and what you give to other people and what they present to you and how you look at that and take whatever it is that you take from that gift of sharing,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that also, have you, from what I said, have you noticed, like, just in say, looking at somebody else's art and then feeling something different that you wouldn't probably experience if it was just like your work, like a different feeling?
Oh
You,
yeah. Oh yeah. Speaking, I mean, my friend Dell Washington, who I mentioned earlier, I was always just enthralled by his art. He was just so prolific and free,
yeah.
I can be very kind of tight, you know, with my
Uh-huh.
very detail oriented to the point of insanity almost, you know, but
Mhm.
he had a freeness about his way of making art that I admired greatly. And any artist who uses an abundance of color also will always grab my attention because you know, I've been pegged as a colorist
Mhm.
at times in my career, and you know, I'll take that because I love color. I did very well, you know, with color theory when I was studying and you know in college and what have you. But at which I went to design school in my 40s after I had had a 20-year career as an artist. I was already published when I went to college, so that was an interesting experience.
Mhm.
I yeah, I I love art. I also collect art, you know.
Okay. Who's your favorite artist outside of yourself?
Oh, I don't know if I can narrow it down like that. I really love Elizabeth Catlett's work as an artist who's no longer with us. Um, uh, Let me think. I'll come back to that because that's not a, I don't really, huh. I mean, I love a lot of the work of the artists, the female artists in an artist collective that I've belonged to for probably 20 years now. Um, uh, Sapphire and Crystals, which was
Okay.
founded by Marva Jolly Pitchford and Felicia Grant Preston here in Chicago. And they were like the thing in Chicago. Everyone just was like, ooh, Sapphire and Crystals, you know. I was, you know, a late bloomer. These ladies are probably like a lot, you know, 10, 15 years older than me in
Mhm.
situations. But their work is phenomenal. I love all of their work. Marva Jolly's work was exceptional. She said she was a potter. You know, some people say she was a ceramicist, but she always said she was a potter. She loved playing with mud as a kid. Who else? Dorian Sylvain, who just won the Three Arts Award last year. So Sapphire and Crystals is in the house with the Three Arts Award. And Joyce Owens, Rose Bluen, Juarez Hawkins, a lot of those ladies are just phenomenal artists. And they're also, a lot of them are curators as well, like myself.
Hmm.
And, yeah, Elizabeth Catlett. I like, no, my mind is just blank right now.
Well, I'm sure it's so many
James Marshall.
names to
Before.
think of. Like, I'm not familiar with all the artists that you that you said, but like for me, like I say, I would actually put you, you know, I'm surrounded by a lot of artists and their work that I'm just starting to know, but I would say that I'm drawn to your work. Um, it has a quality of, like you said, Afrofuturism, but is that, yeah, it's very spiritual and like connected.
Mhm.
And you know, you see the theme with the women like coming together, and you know, it has like a message to it. And then in between everything else is like the colors, the yellows, and then you know, someone looking up, and it makes you feel good. It makes me feel good.
That's my
So,
goal.
huh?
And so that is always my goal. I want my art to make people feel
Right.
happy. Feel good.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does that. I think for me, I don't know if you were familiar with Anthony Armstrong, and I think that was when I first started, like, you know, could say that, oh, I like that. And it was like one piece. I was in a store one day, and the piece is called Naked and Drapery, and it's two, and they're two different ones. So this was one, and it was weird because that was like the first time I connected to a piece of art, and then I didn't buy it, and then it was like a month later it was still with me, and I'm like, oh, I gotta go get that. And it then I found out that I already had a piece that was like totally different, because I guess they call him like the Black Picasso.
Mhm.
And then I said, wow, so it must be something with like this person. So then every time I went somewhere and I could find his work, I just kept buying the same thing. Well, I buy other people too, but I really enjoyed um, his work. And it was like interesting to find your, your artist, like where you that speaks to your soul. And that's happened to me like in all sort of arts, like even in poetry, different things. I remember being at the uh museum one day, and it's this poem, the uh the Puerto Rican obituary. And so they had it and I'm reading it and I just started crying. And I was like, oh my God, like, and like when something just hits you and you're like, what? Like you never had that experience, but that's what art does when it really speaks to you. So, it's happened though in a couple, for different art forms. And it's like an experience that you're like, wow, that was, you would say is spiritual because it connected to you and it just took you somewhere else and made you have this, maybe this emotional, I don't know if you say connection or it could be like emotional collapse at the same time because it's like, what's going on here? But yeah, so that's how you, so then I was looking through like just from your site and I'm like going through the different pieces because I'm like, maybe I can add these. And then I'm looking at all the pieces and like, I guess you had them posted. It was like this, they were all soul. And I mean, and just that, it was like it's a testimony of how extraordinary your work is that a lot of people have artwork online, but doesn't mean it all sells, maybe some people have to actually be in front of it, and people could show stuff all day and they probably never, I don't know if they do or not, but I know your stuff is like so, and I know it moved me to that's how I think I got connected. It was a piece, and I said, oh, and ordered, and so that's interesting to me. And so just tell me whatever else that you're working on, what your dream is to, like you said, you wanted to pass on a legacy for your family. And what are some of the ways that you feel like your art could move the world in another direction, or, do you reflect on what Afrofuturism. So when you're looking at the things that are going on now, does, do you take that to your canvas and say, do things or ideas come to you that way? Or is it just something pure that?
It's pretty pure. I'm a very organic artist who just kind of paints from my soul. But of course, there are times when I'm inspired by some things. Like I really love sci-fi. I've read everything Octavia Butler has ever written ever, and so the stories that I've read by Octavia Butler sometimes creep into my art, even now, even though I read her like 20 years ago. In fact, I'll show you a piece if you can give me a second to grab it. It's right next. Okay. So this piece right here.
Oh.
So wow. This is, to me, I mean, it wasn't an intentional decision to create Akeem from the Genesis series, but this is, the tentacles and there's like a little person there with a long. Have you read her books?
I have not, but I have heard. I have. I guess, yeah, I have to say that I am behind in a lot of reading, and that just comes from, I guess, doing more writing and not really wanting to do, I don't know, it's like I have to consciously say now, like, I want to read for a couple of hours. But it's like when you're, I don't even like, your lifestyle is just that you're always moving and doing stuff creatively. And, I'm like, even during COVID, it was like I bought so many books and then I can't say I read them,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just time wise. So like I had to literally make that, goal to just finish a book.
Yeah, I consider myself a certified bibliophile, but I have not been doing much reading because
Mhm.
painting. I've been creating art, so it's
Right.
I mean, it's like, for instance, last night I was up till 6 a.m. this morning. I
Right.
slept 3 hours. Then I had an 11 a.m. appointment because I'm going to be a panelist on Sunday for the Haitian Art Museum here in Chicago. I'm
Wow.
Nicole Smith, the gallerist from
Mhm.
the gallery.
Mhm.
So that and getting trying to do the Three Arts Award, etc.
Right.
All of that, it's like I don't have time to read anymore. I wish
Mhm.
I really loved reading, but
Yeah. It's like right now I'm practicing just like, okay, my life is it's being taken over. And I remember like a time where I would actually have time to just leisure, like to watch. I didn't have television for like 4 years, and during COVID, it was like, okay, I gotta get an internet, gotta do this, that. And even that, it's like I don't really watch that many things. Have a very different kind of schedule. And but I would like to just have more time for myself to just read and do nothing.
that's just like a very small portion of my books over there. At one time I owned probably over 500 books, and I had to start giving them away. I just could not house all of those books,
Right.
along
Yeah.
with my art, the art that I collect, and all of my art supplies and materials is too much.
Right. And
Clothing.
it's like when, like for me, all my friends are artists, or you're in a group with this one, then their book comes out, then you go.
Mhm.
It's like you're constantly going to book readings,
That was
and
a fun topic.
you're trying to read stuff, and then it's the stuff that you don't know the people, and it just stacks up.
Mhm.
So eventually, I'll get there.
Yeah.
But I certainly hear, I just interviewed someone else that's a writer, but she writes sci-fi. And she mentioned but she has her own um charisma is what she writes from. It's like the first person I knew, her name is Lajira Cooper. And she was in the first writing workshop that I took. And she was the only person I knew that if you gave them a writing prompt, they would just consistently stay with their story and just use it to just go on with the same story instead of just writing some individual piece. It's
Mhm.
been like maybe two other people, one other person I met since that does that. So she had this ongoing sci-fi story about this place called Charisma. And, so we were talking about that. And, that's interesting. And sci-fi, that's like, I guess high on the list right now in the art world, in books and everything, as far as it's especially for Black writers, being that we're hot right now.
Mhm.
But in that part, to have stories that about sci-fi stories written by Black people about Black people. It's not like it's the first time that it's been done, but now it's in demand. I think back to like even with Meteor Man, back in, you remember Robert Townsend, like his movie
Mhm.
back in, yeah, I was talking about that movie too. But so yeah, so we're in a special place in time, where there's a lot of opportunities
Mhm.
for certain parts of art that are being explored. And it's a great demand.
Mhm.
But at the same time, like we discussed earlier, is that you don't want to be pigeonholed, and you don't want to just be, as someone now has deemed you to be bipolar. So it's like,
BIPOC.
after,
I've been saying, is it BIPOC? Because I've been saying BIPOC. I want to get it right.
oh, BIPOC. Well, you
I don't
might be
know.
right.
I don't know.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Like, all of these terms come out and people
Yeah.
say, you know, they call it different things. Half the people don't even know what things mean.
I know.
And we're being like, so if we don't know what the things mean, or, you know, we didn't create them, like, who's doing, it's like African American, we're going back again. So it's like, who's doing all this creating and giving us all these titles? And, you know, like every culture, like even I was talking to someone that's Latin, and they were like, I don't know what Latinx is. And, you know, like,
I know.
and no one really knows well, someone knows, but it's almost like you, and I'm like, you have to go look it up. Like, you got an urban dictionary, you
Right.
got the non-binary, I think it's dictionary. Yeah, so you have to, you know, do all this research just to be correct. And it's like, but it shouldn't really be that hard, because you're talking about people. And if people want to be known as certain titles, you think they would create them themselves. But I don't know who's doing it. We never know who's the person. Like, who's the person that comes up with all?
I know. I was watching something. I think it was on Instagram, one of those like reels or videos or something. And
Uh-huh.
there was a guy interviewing a young man who was supposed to be a specialist on transgenderism,
Uh-huh.
LGBT community. He didn't know what half of those title, those
Right.
classifications were. He had no idea. And the guy was like, I just don't understand. I don't understand. I'm like, the interviewer is a jerk,
Mhm.
but it was interesting that the specialist didn't know what all of the
Right.
terms were. That's what I took from it. So why should everyone else know what
Right.
the terms are?
And the fact that like, I tell people, I'm trying to remember which because I worked in healthcare, so, you know, that was probably the first area where you have the drop down box for nonconformity, but it was maybe a selection of, I think, around 6. And I'm trying to think of the latest form that I filled out, and the drop down box had, I swear, about 25 different things.
Mhm.
So then you're like, what? Okay, and then it's things you never heard of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
So
It's a
so
lot.
then you're so then you're saying to yourself, okay, we got all of these things. Like, what is this now? What is that? Oh, this is too much. Like, how do you really incorporate that into um I don't want to say practical life, but in the scheme of how things were originally set up? And I know there have been some changes, but not in everything. And even in here in New York, in some of my community, I'm a community person for county committee.
Yeah.
And that started with 6 people wanting to run, and they didn't choose female or male, so it was rejected, and then that resulted in a lawsuit. But it's almost like, okay, well, I think for myself, if I had needed to make a decision on something that hadn't changed yet, I would pick something, because even not having a problem with the gender, if I didn't pick one, my application would be dismissed as well. And then that's something to be determined, or have a lawsuit after. So it's like these constant issues that are coming up.
Yeah.
And
It's like Africa, a million languages, different.
yeah, and then when I have conversations with people, it's so much confusion. Like, some people accept one certain thing, and then other people, they're like, no, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I understand that, but I don't, not this one.
Yeah.
So, like, looking at all that, it's like, it's easy to say you want this and want that, but it has to be more work, because in the end, it's like, will we really be able to understand everything because
It's worth it though. I mean, I think that people should have the right to identify as they wish to identify. Um,
right.
and you know, I'm very respectful of that. I've always been super open-minded, you know,
Hmm.
um, identity, you know. And I have a trans child, you know, so
Hmm.
I'm definitely
Hmm.
sensitive on the subject as well.
Hmm.
But you know, I kind of admire these kids that they are just out here changing rules and stirring things up. It's like you're not going to tell me who I am, and
Hmm.
I kind of admire that. You know,
Right.
it's very akin to an artist's spirit. You know, many
Hmm.
are probably artists, but yeah, because artists are the people who shake up the world. You
Hmm.
know, a lot of times, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
you know, there still can always be too much of anything. You know, so the overkill may be starting to happen here. You know, but
Right.
we respect, you know, that people should be able to identify as they wish. Because like I really don't like the terms Black or African American. They don't
Hmm.
mean anything.
Right.
It's what we fed into them, but you know, Negro. I don't know. Did we come up with
So
Black? I forget. African American.
right. And that's the thing. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever heard Smokey Robinson has a, a poem about African American, like who decided we were African American? You can
Yeah.
look it up on YouTube.
Yeah.
And it's like, and he goes through the whole thing. And so like what even I was talking about just yesterday, it's like the census actually makes absolute to me no sense when the boxes when you can't make sense enough of it where like say they have Black not of Hispanic heritage,
Yeah.
and then like my father's Puerto Rican, so it's like okay, so I'm of you know, so if you check Black, can't check Black because it's saying not of Hispanic, and then you have these other categories that's telling you Central America, this place, that place,
Yeah.
and then I'm looking and I'm like, I'm just not on here.
Well,
And then
do it.
my issue is that they have other, which I've always been a component, fan
That's
of,
what
and
we
then I
just
had this idea at some point that I'm just. I'll start this campaign. Everybody just put other, then they'll stop putting us in boxes, and we could just all be, we won't have to have all these things with that pigeonholed us.
right.
But then I went to it's one of these forms, and now it's there other, but you can't check it. And I was like, now see, now that made me feel a little way because I'm like, now I feel like you taking away something from me.
Yeah.
And
I check other also. I've always checked other. I don't like the idea of them putting me in a hole. I'm like, I am an American born hue person or
mhm,
person of hue. You know,
yeah,
that's how I want to identify. So, you know, if everyone can identify the way they want to identify, why can't I? You know,
right. That's interesting. Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
Yeah, but definitely, I think it's in one of the healthcare or and it's like other is there, but you can't if you click on it, you have to put something else. You can't just leave it. Like you can't click other and either you have to write something in, which you don't really, I don't the whole point is not to write anything. You just want to be able to just leave it and keep it moving.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, eventually it'll all be figured out. and,
Or not.
and yeah,
So many
so
things are left incomplete, you know, because everyone has their own vision of how things should be.
mhm,
You know, we just have to learn to be more accepting of difference. Basically, you know, no matter who the person is or where they come from,
uh-huh,
accept you for who you are. Boom, that's it.
mhm,
You know,
mhm,
and you know, respect that.
mhm,
That's the way I feel about it. I mean, that's Father Hasse, the Jesuit priest mentor. I mean, I was in the Catholic Church. This priest bought me books on Buddhism. He was like,
mhm,
"You are going in a whole nother direction on me," you know. So I thought maybe you might be interested in this, and
right.
it was that was impactful. you know.
Have you found from the people, because you sound like almost like a chosen one in many ways. When I say chosen one, where um, people had insight ahead of you of what they saw for your future, and they tried to feed it, feed you with this information so that you would be prepared. So it seems like you can also kind of follow all the people from kindergarten to different people that were came into your life
Mhm.
and brought new concepts. And so do you feel like it was sort of like that constant, new person, oh, check this out.
I think a lot of it is in my DNA too. I mean, my father is a creative, but he's also a spiritual leader, you know.
Hmm.
Purple robe wearing, locks
Hmm.
going
Hmm.
behind, longer than
Okay.
he is, had 7 wives at one time, all of that, but was also an artist.
Hmm.
Then I grew up with my aunt in my grandmother's home. My aunt Mary was an artist also. Then there was Father Hassey, but also, I mean, it's something in me too.
Right.
It's just a very organic thing, and I don't want to say that I'm just like everything is in me, because of course you pick up things along the way, you always do, but I will say that I don't often take things from other artists' work. I
Hmm.
watch television. I don't. I rarely watch videos and stuff. I do go on Instagram because that's work to me, and I
Hmm.
get caught up in there every now and then. But I pretty much like to stay within my own space so that what is coming through me is very pure. When
Right.
I'm creating, I wear white clothing. I cover my
Hmm.
head in white. I wear white clothing, and to um, to signify purity of thought and process and creativity. And no one taught that to me. It's just
Right.
that I naturally did. I did a lot of
Mhm.
weird things as a kid. I was a strange kid. I mean, I was not.
I can understand it. I mean, I know you probably would say, but no, you were someone that knew, and that brings the story that I think when you told your mother you wanted a paint set
Oh yes,
and how you were offended. Now, how old were you?
I was in elementary school. I know for sure.
Uh-huh.
I
And so
probably,
you got the paint by numbers, right?
yeah, I was so upset.
Yeah. And you were like, how dare, like, and so that right there is like you have been, and that's what I tell people sometimes. It's like people can become an artist and then you're born an artist. But me, I don't really feel like people should be taught something. Like when like you said, you never studied, like you studied some things, but you weren't taught how to do art. You were exposed to different things that you used in your own creativity. But it's like I was a makeup artist, or I guess I'm a makeup artist, just not doing it as
Am
much.
I? I studied
And
cosmetology too.
okay. Well, I didn't do hair. I just did my was first I had my makeup license and then aesthetics. So I did facials, then I did hair removal and all of that with the
I studied it
laser.
all, but I studied
But
makeup
hmm,
artistry and hair mostly, yeah. But I didn't
hmm.
go too deep
and
into the esthetician part. Yeah.
and that's well, it's all the same. But using that as an example, I remember I was already doing makeup, and then when I went to get my aesthetics license, the makeup part was a part of that. So then it was like I had to be taught like how to do something. And anytime like I know how to do something that comes from your spirit, and then I'm one of those people, I just don't believe in studying how to do something if you already have the gift to do it,
Mhm.
because it in a way it's like it takes away, I feel like it kind of messes with your freedom,
I agree.
because then you're already out here doing what you do that
Yeah.
is God given, and then you go and then you got someone trying to tell you that you have to do it. Like
Right.
you have to follow these rules. And, you know, creativity, you could get stuck in that. I used to teach makeup. This is an example. And I remember it's like two stories out of that. Like teaching makeup, and I remember when people used to do the colors, and they would say, you know, you had a lot of women walking around from the 70s, you know, before blue eyeshadow came back, you know, it had never left for some people.
Mhm.
And it was always like, oh, you get stuck in time, and then somebody tells you that something, oh, these are your colors. And those people just stay, oh, these are my colors. So they just wear those colors, and they never, it's almost like, and I would say, I never want to do that to a person. I'm not telling people no colors. I give them creativity and flexibility where I would say, just go buy a makeup kit and get in the mirror and experiment
Mhm.
and use your own eyes to see what looks good to you, so that they're not locked into some somebody's perception of what looks good. It might look good, but I don't, that's not what art is.
Yeah.
So we had that. And then I remember I told a girl to outline, I think I told her to outline her eye. And I was talking about like with the eyebrow pencil. And she took like the color and she put it around the top and the bottom. And then me, even in that time, I'm looking at her like, what? Like, so that was, it's like the opposite of what I was saying, because I didn't expect her to do that. And so like now you actually see that. And some people do makeup like that, where they just take the whole color and outline the top and the bottom. And I always go back to remembering this girl when she she did it, and I'm looking at her like, okay. But it's always an interesting thing when it comes to God-given talent. And then I just feel like people have so much in them already, and they just need to be free with it and express it, and not always think that, oh, I can't do this because I have to go learn how to do it. You know, it's like a joke. Like today, I remember I didn't know how to do salsa dancing, and I took lessons, but I could always be on the floor doing just whatever, you know, you move with your spirit, and, you know, it worked. I took lessons, and so I got this certificate that says intermediate salsa dancer, and I'm scared to death to dance now, because before I would just follow and I was free. Now I'm thinking, oh, I took classes, I can't remember anything. I'm in my head. And
Mhm.
that's why I don't do that.
No, I
So
understand. I was saying that uh, teachers create proteges and artists create themselves.
wow, that's great. You should, okay, that's a t-shirt.
'Cause I just I could never get with that. Father Hesse was probably the only teacher I was able to extract something from because
Right,
he did not teach in that way. He was not trying to make me a mini him. You know,
right.
he would give us the supplies and tell us to go for it, and he would give us, the basic theory of color and design and art, the five things, that you should know. And, after that, we were on our own, and he would look at it and he would, give us his opinion of it. And he would try to be positive, because he was not out crushing children's dreams, or crushing their spirits, he was a very good teacher to have, art teacher
Hmm.
to have. And later on, trying to do like art in high school, I couldn't. It drove me crazy because I was so accustomed to being free and doing what I wanted
Hmm.
to do. And then when I went to design school, even when I went to cosmetology school, I was teaching the teachers because I had already self-taught so much. And I'd
Right,
been doing these things for years before I even went to school for it. And design school was a little bit different because design is more of a science than it is, the visual art type.
hmm,
And I didn't really like it. It was too structured for me and too, much measuring.
Right.
building codes or what have you. So I went to school for interior design. And I've been doing all of this stuff. I'm like, you know what? I'm more of an artist than a designer. And perhaps I, would be better as more like an interior creative or something. Put a spin on it, because you can't say you're an interior designer if you haven't been approved, by, the interior design board or whatever. So, yeah, even though there are people who never stepped foot in a school in their life, and they just know intuitively how to do these things, because maybe
Right.
they come from another life. I don't know, but it's I think it's kind of disgusting how the way things are set up, because I used to tell artists and teachers all the time, so who taught the original artists? Who taught the first people who created art from out of nothing, So who gives anyone the right to tell someone how they should create?
Right.
You're no better, you're not a better God than I am.
Right. Right. And that's the thing. I just think that all people are born with a gift that they just have. It's just like musicians and
Mhm.
songs, like people come with notes in their head and things that I don't hear, but then I guess my creativity other people don't get, and that's what makes it all work. We all have parts of that same,
Just respect people's creativity, no matter where it comes from the academic, perspective, or from the homegrown. I played in mud and made mud patties and sculpture. Marva Jolly's work was in what was that? Daughters of the Dust. Her work was in that movie, and she still stuck with her foundation, her beginning. That's where my art came from, making mud pies in the South. And I always respected that about her. You asked me about other artists, and I am often represented by Gallery Gashard and Francis and Andre Gashard here in Chicago, and they are two powerhouse artists as well that I respect quite a bit. There are tons. There's so many. Of course, we can go with the Kehinde Wileys and the Carrie James Marshall, of course, who is also in Chicago. And, you can go with the bigger names, but I like to acknowledge the ones who are not blasted all over.
Exactly.
Not that I don't respect the ones who
right.
Point if that's where they want to be, but I still like to because I think that does not mean that you are a better artist than anyone else. That just means that you were very good at cutting the red tape. I mean, not to take anything away from these artists' artistry. I'm not saying that they're not talented.
Right.
That's not all there is to it. Is like making it. Yeah.
Right. It's like, and that's what I guess my show, I try to highlight people that you might not be the name that everyone knows, but you're just as much of a genius. And, to give people an opportunity to be, because I have deemed you legend of the future. So that's basically what I'm saying. I look at people and I see talent that maybe not today, but later on we will be studying and people will know your name. But it's like, unless some people, it's like, in so many areas of the arts, it's like, come on now, it's like the same people over and over, not to take anything away from them, but it's so many other people that need exposure and that are just as good. But it's kind of like, how do you become, like you said, when they told you, let's pull you back into the circle or the fold. Yeah. And sometimes you're in folds and they don't fit, and you go, find your like, okay, this is not my element, or you find what works for you. And sometimes just being in your own space, doing your own thing, because that's where everything flows, and you have to respect that. And I totally understand that. So I give you all the honors and applauds for what you do. That you, if you want to inspire people, make them smile, that you do that on a daily basis. And I thank you for that. So,
Well, for me, I've never really fit anywhere. My art doesn't really look like anyone else's art. It just it's different. You know, the colors are either too loud, you know, to fit in, or it's just different. And you know, I'm not saying that with a big head, like with an ego.
right,
I don't follow any rules. I really am not a person who follows rules. I know the rules, but I feel very comfortable in breaking those rules as well. You know?
uh-huh.
Yeah. Because
Wow,
otherwise, how do you ever come up with something new and original and fresh and different? You know, if you're
right,
willing to break any of the rules, I don't want to be someone else's mini me. I
right,
never did, yeah. And I don't want to make anyone my mini me. You know.
right. Yeah, and you just want to, you know, if you had to support someone, you would give them the tools that like someone gave you and
Mhm,
said, here, you could do this, that, here, find find yourself
mhm.
and, you know, sharing that and appreciate it. And
Yes,
I guess that's in a lot of ways the best gift you can give someone, to just respect their artistry and let them grow and not try to put them in boxes, because nobody wants to be in a box.
yes. Oh, Marvin Tate is another artist. Tracy Close.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of artists. I could go on and on and on who I admire their work ethic, you know,
Uh-huh.
their consistency in their art. With me, I'm consistent but not consistent at the same time. It's like I'm the artist who does not work every day per se, but I may work 3 days in a row without sleep and then sleep
Right,
for 2 days and then work again. Yeah, I'm kind of all over the place, but I get it
right.
done, you know.
I understand. I'm all
Yeah.
over the place. Like, and people that they don't understand, because it's like a lot of times I'm up and I'm like, the I never used to use an alarm, but I think I must have set it for, I don't know if it was the sometime I had to get up really early in the morning and I just left it on. So now it was like, and I just never changed it on my phone. So it would go off at 5 o'clock, but I'm still up and I'm looking at it and say, do I am I getting up or am I going to sleep?
I know.
And then that just became like my normal, like 5 o'clock, I'm going to sleep. Now I think that's been for about a year. So now just maybe the past 2 weeks, I'm like, I'm just tired. I just, you know, which I never say. And I'm just like, I want to go, like, I'm at that point now where it's just like, okay, and never turn my phone off and always available to talk.
Me
But
too.
it's like I'm in a different space finally. It's like I just want to sleep and I'm going away and I'm so happy, because it's like, you know, before I could go away once a month and, you know, that's your downtime. You can shut everything off. And now I haven't been able to do that. So I'm looking
Mhm.
forward to that. And so
Yeah.
anyway, is there anything else that you want to share with us about your wonderful self that we want to, where can we find your work, your website, exhibits? Do they have, like, when they have the galleries, do they have an online, like the gallery itself of the work where
So
people?
Gallery Gishard, actually, that's in the Artist Loft building that I have my studio in. They actually did virtual shows all of last
Mhm.
year, they still are. And those shows have been picked up by the Met in New York. So
Wow.
archiving all over. So I'm in that collection of things.
Wow. Okay.
It's kind of cool. You can always find me through Gallery Gishard.
Mhm.
Because I prefer someone else take care of all of that. I'm just not very good at all of that. I am, but
Mhm.
what happens is my art suffers if I'm getting into the whole left.
Right.
You know.
Mhm.
You can also, I'm at Bronzeville Artist Lofts, McCabe Kadeem Dubose Studio, which is on East 47th Street in Chicago, Illinois. You can also contact me on Instagram. I am on Madec, and that's AHN. Medek 22. I'm Medek 22. And An is my middle name. Medek is Kadeem backwards. And 22 is. I'm also
Wow.
MK Dubose. That's MKD like David, U, B like boy, O, S like Sam, E like Edward, underscore art on Instagram as well. And I'm on Facebook and Twitter and all of the other ones too. You can find me, Makeba Kadeem Dubose.
Right. Okay. Well, it certainly has been a pleasure hearing all your insight into the art world. And we didn't get, well, if you could just move over a little bit and show us the big piece, and just tell us about that piece a little bit.
So this is an older piece of mine. It's from my bean collage series. I use red beans in those pieces. Yeah, because it for me, red beans are a very cultural food staple for
Wow.
many indigenous cultures, including Black people or people of hue. And it's angels with children and ancestors, and the burden of angels looking over the human race, and all of
Wow.
the we did. So they kind of look like, oh dear, we have to look after these humans again.
Well, we got our work cut out for us now.
But the deeper story is that painting was done while I was going through divorce. And that is me and someone that I started dating during divorce who was also going through the same situation. And
Wow.
we had children, and we're the angels looking over our children.
Wow. Thank you for that. Wow. See? Now just imagine all your pieces, you probably have stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one more I want to show you. This is a recent one.
Wow.
If you can see that well.
Yeah. That's one. Yeah.
So this
I've seen that. You had that one online, right?
I do. Yes. And then there's so that's one of the things, I'm doing the 3 Arts formal submission to accept the nomination. And I'm like, what do I focus on? Because I can't show you this right now, but I wish I could. But I do collage bottles. They're black and white bottles.
Right. So those two.
I have a ton of like installation pieces because I tend to work small to build bigger installations because I'm either in a huge space where I'm exhibiting art for other people, a gallery type space, and I don't get to do my own work, or I'm living and working in the same space because I can never separate myself from my art, my living from my art making. So I'm a painter, I'm a mixed media artist, I'm a sculptor, I'm a collage. I'm all over the place. So it's like, what do you?
Okay. We honor that you're all over the place and are so thankful that you are.
Thank you. Thank you. At least someone appreciates it because
yeah. I mean, how else would you be able to get all this? How would we be enriched in the world without you being all over the place?
I appreciate that. But as I said, galleries do not respect that. They want your work to be homogenous, easily recognizable by anyone, anywhere in the world, so that you have a brand and they can sell a brand. It's a lot more difficult for a gallery to sell an artist who is not necessarily branded.
Well, I think your work, I think you can see that as you, even if it's different. I mean, I can, so I don't know what they're looking at. Yeah. I mean, you have, like you said, you're multimedia, you do the bottles and do different things. So, but most artists that I know, like in New York, I don't know if you ever heard of him, but Voodoo Faye, he's one like a care less about rules, and he's breaking all the rules, and he's a great artist. And
Represented by a gallery?
well, what happened was he ended up he has his own, what the spot is called. So he actually ended up getting the spot. And then he's done like stuff for Calvin Klein and a whole bunch of people. And
how it goes, you know. That's usually how it goes for the artists who cannot draw in the lines. They have to create their own space because there are rules, you know, and if you break the rules, a lot of times you get kicked out of the nest, you know, you get blackballed and stuff, you know, so you have to create your own space.
Yeah, so it's a space that I think has been created, and he's, you know, could care less about being defined by people. And I mean, it's a whole, you have to watch the story on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
He follows the thing that, anyway, it's a whole thing with him. And I love his work too. And it is very free. And he uses things that, like the canvases, that if he finds them, or bottle tops, like he'll make jewelry, table out of bottle tops, corks, everything, you know. So he uses recycled material to create wonderful new art.
Yeah, that's like Marvin Tate. He's just a genius, you know.
And in the whole art healing theory that he does, I think it started out like that, from depression and so forth, stuff in his own life, like looking at art, the colors and how it made people feel. So it's like this whole art study he's doing now. And then how on the other side, everything's bright and how you feel. And, you know, the whole documentation of how art heals. And so he's doing that.
That's one of the secrets of my art that a lot of people don't know unless they really know me, is that there's always purple in my art.
Okay.
The color has the highest spiritual vibratory rate, the ground chakra, you know, and even if it doesn't look like it's there, it's mixed in with the black paint, you know.
Wow.
Energy needs to be in my work, and that's probably what you feel. You say you feel this spiritual energy, and that would definitely bring that.
Right. So that would definitely be, you know, your brand. Like if you say it's in all your work and it's there, and maybe people don't notice it and they have to, you know, find it. So yeah, I have to look through more of it now. That's cool. That's an interesting, I'm glad you explained that. I could see, but we'll talk later.
In these evil and troubled times, it's really hard to see the sunshine. It's even hard